Greetings and welcome. I'm genuinely honored that you've chosen to spend part of your day with this video. If you decide to subscribe, it would mean everything to me. Your support truly lifts my spirits. Now let's begin. Ryan Matthews lived by routine. Order gave his world meaning, whether at work, in his personal life, or simply in how he organized his days. As a senior logistics analyst working out of Minnesota, he embraced a life of clean predictability. Sunday soccer, balanced home-cooked meals, and errands at the local co-op. Most central to it all was Deborah, his wife for 12 solid years. To Ryan, Deborah wasn't just his partner, she was the embodiment of reliability, loyal, trustworthy, committed to the life they had constructed with such care. Until one day, that sense of security began to erode. It was gradual at first. Deborah, then 36, began arriving home later than usual. Ryan initially attributed it to the demands of her marketing job. Long hours came with the territory. But then the subtle signs crept in. Hushed phone conversations, luxury lingerie tucked deep in her dresser, and a fragrance he didn't recognize. Ryan, who was 38, dismissed these red flags as unfounded suspicion. He told himself it was temporary, that it would all resolve. But the illusion shattered on a random weekday. Coming home early due to a splitting headache, he walked into their bedroom, only to discover Deborah entangled with Jason Rowe. Jason, age 40, was every bit the caricature of smug self-importance. A sales executive at the same firm as Deborah, he oozed confidence, charm twisted into arrogance. Ryan didn't raise his voice. He didn't hurl accusations. Instead, he simply said 4 calm, unshakable words. Leave, both of you. They obeyed. And with their exit, 12 years of marriage disappeared into a chilling silence. Ryan spent the next 2 days alone in their home, consumed by a toxic blend of grief, disbelief, and rage. Then, on Saturday, while mowing the lawn in a hollow attempt to reclaim normalcy, a sleek black Audi A7 pulled into the driveway. Jason stepped out casually, dressed like a man arriving for a friendly negotiation instead of someone who had just detonated another person's life. "Let's make this smooth," he said, hands deep in his pockets. "Skip the legal mess. No arguments. You walk away, no claim to her assets. She deserves to be happy with me." His tone was less of a request and more of a condescending decree. Ryan didn't engage. He left the lawnmower running, turned his back, and closed the door without saying a word. What Jason hadn't anticipated was that Ryan's property was wired with security cameras. High-definition video, clear audio, all stored securely in the cloud with detailed timestamps. No yelling, no impulsive calls to 911. Instead, Ryan did what he did best. Documented and filed a formal report. Methodical, unemotional, complete. That same evening, law enforcement reached out to Jason. By morning, his tone had changed drastically. Jason was now calling Ryan repeatedly, his arrogance replaced by frantic desperation. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he snapped over the phone. "This will blow back on you. Take it back. Say you misinterpreted." Ryan, calmly sipping his morning coffee in the kitchen, replied with 5 quiet words. "Speak to your attorney, Jason." That's when it hit him. Ryan wasn't just angry. He was calculated. Deborah's reaction came not face-to-face, but in a stream of enraged texts and emotionally charged voicemails. "You're ruining his life," one message read. "Jason just wanted to reason with you. You're being childish, bitter. This is why our marriage fell apart. You always played the victim. Grow up." There was no apology, no ownership of betrayal, just entitlement and blame. Ryan responded the only way he knew how, meticulously. Every voicemail, every message, every veiled threat was cataloged in a detailed spreadsheet, complete with summaries and time logs. His lawyer, Timothy Grant, a calm and razor-sharp professional, reviewed the records and gave a single approving nod. "We won't argue emotion," Timothy said. "We'll just present the facts. Let their own words do the damage." The divorce papers were served at Jason's condo, where Deborah had moved. That's when the real war began. Jason tried to spin a new narrative. He claimed the driveway conversation had been misrepresented. His high-powered legal team sent a letter accusing Ryan of defamation and demanding a retraction. Ryan forwarded it to Timothy. The response was one line: "Only the guilty respond like this. Ignore it." But Jason didn't stop there. A few weeks later, Ryan received notification that Jason had requested a restraining order. The accusation? That Ryan had been stalking them. Their evidence consisted of a blurry photo of Ryan's car parked near Jason's residence. Panic surged. How does one prove a negative? How could he confirm he wasn't there? Then it struck him. His car had a telematics tracker installed years ago to qualify for discounted insurance. It logged every trip, every stop, every location. Timothy quickly filed for subpoena access. 2 weeks later, certified GPS data was in their hands. The logs were ironclad. On the day of the supposed incident, Ryan's car had not moved from the office parking garage. From 8:17 a.m. to 5:15 p.m., it remained parked. 3 co-workers submitted sworn statements verifying Ryan was present in a company meeting that afternoon. At the court hearing, Deborah and Jason sat together, whispering and exchanging smug looks. Their attorney laid out a shaky, disjointed argument. Then Timothy stepped forward, calm, clear, relentless. He presented the GPS data, eyewitness affidavits, and time-stamped evidence with surgical precision. Jason's attorney turned visibly pale. Deborah's hands twisted in her lap. Jason began to squirm in his seat as though the floor had suddenly turned hot. The judge looked directly at Jason. "You're alleging harassment," she said, voice steady and sharp. "But the facts show the respondent was at work, his vehicle stationary, miles from your location. Are you prepared to lie under oath, Mr. Rowe?" Silence filled the room. Jason's lawyer faltered. The judge remained unimpressed. The restraining order was immediately denied, but it didn't end there. The judge referred the case to prosecutors for criminal investigation. Charges of false reporting, perjury, and potential conspiracy were now on the table. What started as a lie had turned into a criminal matter, and Ryan, calm, exacting, and unshaken, hadn't even broken a sweat. Outside the courthouse, the doors swung open as Jason and Deborah left, their expressions blank with defeat. Press gathered, but they said nothing. No rebuttals, no spin, just silence. Ryan didn't bother looking back. He was already walking the other way, briefcase in hand, exchanging a silent nod with Timothy, a gesture between 2 men who understood. This battle was far from finished. Within days, the judge's referral reached the district attorney's office. The investigation was underway. Subpoenas issued, witnesses questioned, evidence compiled, and Ryan, true to his nature, handled it all with cold precision. In the weeks that followed, the flawless persona Deborah had so carefully assembled began to come apart. Invitations from friends slowed to a trickle. The easy laughter of co-workers turned awkward, and the hushed conversations in corridors evolved into unmistakable judgment. The story she had told herself, that Ryan was cold, manipulative, and emotionally unavailable, was unraveling thread by thread. Simultaneously, Jason's world was collapsing in a quieter but more catastrophic way. Once prominently displayed on his company's leadership page, he was quietly placed on leave. The public explanation cited ongoing legal proceedings. Privately, the reason was simpler. He had become a risk no one wanted to shoulder. His phone stayed silent. Long-standing business relationships began to dissolve. His sleek Audi A7 gathered dust in the garage, unpaid notices stacked on the dashboard like relics of a status now lost. But Ryan wasn't watching their collapse. His focus had shifted. He was rebuilding. His new routine was rigid but restorative. Strong coffee at 6:15, a brisk run along the shores of Lake Nokomis by 6:45, and therapy appointments every Thursday morning at 8. In those therapy sessions, he peeled back more than just the recent betrayal. He began to confront years of emotional neglect he'd previously ignored. He recognized how Deborah's affection had become a transaction, something to be earned rather than shared. "I treated love like a job," Ryan admitted one morning. "If I just did more, tried harder, she'd notice me again." His therapist, Elise, soft-spoken and perceptive, responded with quiet insight. "Sometimes people only acknowledge worth they see reflected in themselves. If they couldn't see yours, that doesn't mean it wasn't real." Her words stayed with him, echoing long after he left her office. Meanwhile, legal updates landed with mechanical regularity. 3 months after the judge's recommendation, the district attorney moved forward with formal charges. Deborah and Jason were both indicted, falsifying a police report and conspiring to commit perjury. Deborah, once a respected name in marketing circles, now appeared in conversations alongside a case file number. With mounting evidence against him, Jason's legal team pushed for a plea deal. He ultimately confessed to issuing threats and making a false statement. The heavier accusations were dismissed, largely because Ryan had meticulously documented everything. Jason was sentenced to 3 years of probation, ordered into a year of anger management, and fined heavily. His criminal record followed him everywhere, from job interviews to loan applications, haunting any attempt to rebuild. As a first-time offender, Deborah was offered a diversionary program. Though she avoided conviction, the charges remained publicly available, easy to uncover for any future employer or landlord. And they did look. Her friends, once constant confidants, returned her messages with clipped formality or not at all. In the office, conversations ceased when she entered. The gossip was now a constant buzz in the background. She wasn't fired, but the promotion she had been eyeing for over a year was handed to someone else. Less experienced, but untainted. The message rang clear. Yet the most brutal consequences came not at work, but in court. Ryan presented his case, laying bare the infidelity, manipulation, and relentless demands. Her credibility dissolved. She had asked for 60% of the home equity, alimony, and part of his retirement account. The court rejected her entirely. Her demands were deemed punitive, lacking sincerity. The judge declared she had forfeited her standing as a good-faith participant. Ryan kept the house, bought out her reduced share, and was even partially reimbursed for his legal expenses. The woman who had once dismissed him with contempt now stood beside a man just as ruined, both stripped of reputations, resources, and illusions. They stayed together, not out of affection, but out of shared guilt and the absence of alternatives. Ryan, in contrast, returned to a house free from pain. He painted new colors onto old walls, swapped out furniture, gave away the mattress that had come to represent everything broken. Each small change was an act of quiet defiance, a way of reclaiming not just his space, but himself. He wasn't after vengeance, he was after peace. And slowly, through honesty and discipline, he began to find it. The first night he slept alone in a new bed wasn't triumphant. No celebration, no music, just silence, the soft rustle of fresh sheets, the hum of the air conditioning. But for the first time in over a year, sleep came easily. No tension in his chest. No nightmares of courtrooms or cross-examinations. Just calm. The sounds that now defined his days were different. The wind moving through trees outside his window, the low crackle of his backyard fire pit on quiet Friday nights, and the warm buzz of text messages from those who had stood by him. Friends who never asked if he had tried harder, because they already knew he had. When the divorce was finalized, the judge's gavel confirmed more than just a legal decision. It affirmed reality. What Ryan gained wasn't just victory, it was clarity. Deborah and Jason's collapse hadn't been accidental. It was the product of arrogance, of willful decisions made without foresight. They had underestimated him, mistaking his silence for surrender. But his quiet had been intentional, and in the end, it proved devastating. The court granted him every request, full rights to the home, protective measures against Jason, and, perhaps most importantly, the dignity to walk away as someone who endured without compromising his integrity. Their unraveling didn't stop with the ruling. Through Amy, a mutual acquaintance who still kept in touch with both sides, Ryan learned that Jason had relinquished his car lease and moved out of the upscale apartment. With a tainted reputation and no career path left, he ended up in a dated rental, far from his once polished world of client dinners and business cards. Deborah's fall was subtler, more internal. Her workplace grew colder with each passing week. Her name became a cautionary whisper. The promotion she had seen as inevitable was no longer mentioned. Team meetings went on without her. Eventually, she stopped attending altogether. Their once intoxicating romance, once described in breathless tones as fated, was now reduced to a lifeless partnership in a dull, cluttered space. Bills went unpaid. Legal documents covered the kitchen table. They lived in the ruins of what they'd tried to take. Ryan made no effort to monitor their downfall. He didn't check Deborah's social media, didn't ask Amy for updates. When people mentioned them, he listened with courtesy but never asked for more. He no longer dwelled on the past. Those sleepless nights lost to betrayal had taken enough from him. These days, his focus had shifted to rebuilding. Every Saturday at dawn, he pushed off into the calm waters of Lake Nokomis in his kayak. He'd never been one for pastimes, but something about slicing through the early morning stillness brought him a quiet kind of healing. In motion, he found stillness. Therapy had become a steady rhythm in his life. Each appointment peeled back layers of guilt, unanswered questions, and long-suppressed feelings. Elise, his therapist, helped him recover the parts of himself he'd surrendered over the years, worn away by emotional compromise. She showed him how often he'd shrunk himself to avoid conflict, how he had mistaken a lack of emotional warmth for stability. "You didn't lose her," Elise had told him once. "You just finally saw who she really was." The truth of that statement settled into him like a weight that somehow made him lighter. Slowly, Ryan began to see the imbalance he had lived with, constantly putting her needs ahead of his own, suppressing himself just to maintain peace. He had loved someone who used his silence against him, someone who treated his empathy as a tool to manipulate, someone who believed loyalty meant self-erasure. But now everything about how he navigated life was different. He reconnected with old friends, made space for new relationships. He went out, not to fill a void, but to feel present, to smile without guilt. One evening, as twilight bled into the sky, he sat at the edge of the dock. Amy joined him, offering companionship without the need for words. She had never taken sides or fueled the drama. She had stayed neutral, grounded. "I heard she's trying to move on," she said carefully, watching his reaction. Ryan gave a quiet shrug. "She's free to." "You don't resent her?" Amy asked gently. He took a moment before answering. "I did, at first. But holding on to that hate just kept me tethered to her. I'd rather choose peace." Amy's smile was soft. "You've changed." He nodded. "Not really. I just stopped pretending I was okay being invisible." They said nothing else, letting the silence stretch between them, comfortable and unburdened, while stars scattered across the sky above. A silence shared by those who've truly moved on. Ryan's strength hadn't come from revenge. It came from endurance. When autumn arrived with its crisp air and golden leaves, it didn't just bring a new season, it marked a turning point for Ryan Matthews. The legal struggles were behind him. The lies had surfaced. And what remained wasn't triumph in the traditional sense. It was clarity. Jason and Deborah had built a fragile new life from the consequences of their actions. Their choices had scarred them. Deborah, once a rising star in marketing, now moved through her office like a ghost. She hadn't been fired, but the silent disapproval was unmistakable. Colleagues avoided her gaze. Her input in meetings landed with a thud. She remained on payroll more out of obligation than respect. She had become a cautionary tale, whispers trailing behind her like smoke. Jason's fall was swifter and harsher. A plea deal kept him from jail but couldn't save his name. His contacts disappeared. The high-profile clients he once flaunted were reassigned to newer, more credible agents. His reputation had become a sealed door. He made one last grasp at relevance, launching a lackluster online venture. But once investors discovered his history, they disappeared. His name carried a stench no one wanted to touch. Amy, ever the watchful observer, once ran into them at a grocery store. She told Ryan how worn Deborah looked, her coat too big, her eyes dulled by defeat. Jason, once cocky, seemed hollowed out, like a man shrinking beneath the weight of his own disgrace. "They didn't even look at me," she said, "like they hoped I wouldn't see them." Ryan didn't feel vindicated. Not really. His satisfaction didn't come from watching them fall. It came from knowing he had risen, without vengeance. His justice wasn't loud. It was intentional, honest, measured. It came from letting the truth speak for itself. When the final letter arrived from his attorney, finalizing the divorce, securing the restraining order, settling every financial matter, Ryan took the day in silence. He didn't announce it. Didn't mark it with fanfare. He returned to the lake, alone, in his kayak, surrounded by stillness. As he drifted, feeling the breeze on his face, he didn't think of everything he had lost. He focused on what he had reclaimed, his voice, his dignity, his peace. He thought about the man he used to be, the one who stayed silent just to keep harmony, who accepted scraps and called it love. That man was gone. Burned away by betrayal, reshaped through resilience. And now what remained was not broken, not hardened, just whole. That night, he opened his journal, a habit Elise had encouraged, and wrote only a few lines. But they said everything. They mistook my silence for weakness. They thought I wouldn't stand. They believed they could erase my story. But I never needed to scream, only to speak truth. They're still trapped in the lie. I'm not. I'm free. Ryan had never been the kind to seek revenge. But when the moment called for strength, he showed up. Not with rage, but with resolve, and that had been enough. He didn't destroy them. He simply let the weight of their decisions bring them down. And for the first time in years, Ryan Matthews belonged wholly to himself. That's where we close the chapter. Feel free to share your reflections in the comments. And if this story struck a chord, explore more journeys on our channel. Until next time, friend.